Saint Rita of Cascia. Wife, mother, religious. 1381 to 1457. Saint Rita's story as a wife, mother, and religious might have inspired Elizabeth Ann Seton. Saint Rita was born in central Italy and wanted to spend her adult life as an Augustinian nun in the local convent she frequently visited. At the time, parents arranged marriages for their daughters. The concept of a daughter falling in love and marrying a man of her choice was relatively unheard of. Thus, the family pushed her into an 18-year marriage to a man, Paolo Mancini, who was very harsh and cruel. Rita eventually agreed to the marriage out of obligation to her parents and the feeling that this was God's will for her life. She had 2 twin sons she needed to raise on her own, after her husband was ambushed and killed on his way home from work. It was the Italian custom, or unwritten law of personal vendetta. The implementation of the vendetta or revenge would, by custom, be the responsibility of her 2 sons. Rita prayed, and tried to persuade her sons not to murder their father's attackers. But God intervened and her sons each died a natural death, before they could seek revenge. She also accepted as God's will, that her sons die with the stain of murder on their souls. When both of her sons died, and she was left alone, Rita then tried, unsuccessfully, to join the Augustinians in Cascia. She was rejected for 2 reasons: first, she was a widow, and secondly, relatives of the members of the political faction responsible for Paolo's death were nuns in the convent. She spent a good deal of time praying and restoring peace between the political parties of her town. Because of her peacemaking activities, at the age of 36, this St. Augustine community accepted her into their order. One day when she was about 60 years of age, she was praying and suddenly a small wound appeared on her forehead. For the next 15 years she had the external sign of stigmatization. The Century Dictionary tells us, the act of stigmatizing, or the condition of being stigmatized, specifically, the supposed miraculous impression of the marks of Christ's wounds on the bodies of certain persons. The very Saint Augustine, who had initially rejected her, came to see her as an inspiration to the other sisters, and because of her ability to overlook pain, demonstrate patience, and keep a joyful disposition, then accepted her into the community of sisters. One of her relatives came to visit with her a few months before her death, asked, "Is there anything you need?" Her response was she wanted a rose from her parents' home be brought to her. It was a small thing to ask, and thought to be impossible in the month of January. When her visitor went to the home of Rita's parents, there was a single rose on a rose bush. The relative picked it, and returned it to Rita, as an amazing God's love for Rita. Rita's final words to the sisters who gathered around her were, "Remain in the holy love of Jesus. Remain in obedience to the Holy Roman Church. Remain in peace and fraternal charity." Turning again to the dictionary for clarity of the term, fraternal charity, we read, "The practice of charity with a love that recognizes another person as a child of God, and therefore as brother or sister in the Lord." On May 22, 1457, Rita returned to God in a peaceful state. She was beatified by Pope Urban VIII in 1627 and canonized by Pope Leo IV on May 22, 1900. She's often prayed to and asked to intercede with God on their behalf by those seeking to overcome suffering, the afflictions of abuse, sickness, desperate causes, difficult marriages, widows and wounded people. There are many stories about Saint Rita's acts of charity and obedience. One such story is that when Convent Mother Superior wanted to test her obedience, she told her to water a dead and withered plant in the convent garden for a year. Saint Rita did so. At the end of the year the plant came to life. Today, 500 years later, that same vine remains bountiful and beautiful. Its leaves are dried and powdered and sent all over the world to people who are suffering. Many cures have been reported by the grape leaves. Its fruit is sent to the Pope and to other dignitaries.